the definition of 0-point standing is actually a map, a mental map of the metrics of balance, from which then we can begin to really experience how do we sense our physical body. And it's important because it allows then to design all the polarities and connections existed within the metrics of balance. So the first thing and the most important thing is the placement of your legs on the floor. And remember that the hips are connecting the right and the left side of the hip through the hip to the legs, the knees, the ankles, and your feet, and begin to find the distance between your feet. And it's a little bit open, a little bit, the stanza. It's not parallel, because you will notice that if you go parallel, then what happens is that the lower back thrusts itself forward. And then when it does that, it pushes the upper torso back a little bit. And it gives us the sense that we really are vertical because we think that we are taller, but in reality we separated ourselves from the right and the left forces. So just a little bit of rotation between the right and the left and your foot and your feet allow them to sense the sense of a spiral nature of the floor, and then a sense of right and the left within the hips. So I'm defining the right and the left within the hips by the stanza. Yeah? And then the way you practice that, you can go a little bit closer together and you can see what happens, that the pelvis converge. You can open it to what the distance you think is the distance that design the right and the left and your hip. And then you can go wider too. You can just go wider and find out what that is. If you go wider, it's all right too, but then the sacrum gets a little bit turned back, and that robs a little bit of the extension of the neck. So for now, we just suggest to you that find a place that it is the measurement, the best you can, or right and left, as it centralize the hips. All right? When that takes place then, the next thing is that beginning to know that you are in the 7 centers. And the definition of the 7 centers, it will help you enormously if you're thinking about the arms. Because remember, red skeleton, when it's just like completely down, you know, it has no life force, so everything is down. So remember that the sensation of your being is actually life force. And then how much sensation do you need in your arms to take away the idea that you're just going to relax your arms down? That is important, because for many of us, we think that relaxation is a form of letting go. So we're all innocently thinking, okay, I'm too tense, I need to relax, I need to relax. And when we do that, we drop the skeleton, we drop the body. And then we think that we are released because we are not feeling anything, or we took about a lot of our sensation away from ourselves. So balance is a tensional sense that allows you to sense your body. So think in those terms about it, and then begin to find out how much energy you need in your arms to define the release of the shoulder and the suspension of the shoulder girdle. In the beginning, all this may seem a little bit artificial to you, because you feel, oh my God, I'm becoming like, you know, like robotic a little bit, I'm going up and so forth. So if you feel that way, just let it go a little bit and then just go for the minimum amount of tension that you need to feel that you are suspending yourself without feeling that you are really holding the body too much up. Okay? Then once you define that in your arms and the shoulder girdle and the center of your chest, then go to the throat, go to the head, and go to the crown. And then from then, just do the best in finding the center of a space. So you may find yourself that you're very much back up there. Then you, from above, you can come forward and come back to the center of the space. And then if you feel like you went too much forward, just come back in it and just find for a few moments the center of the space and spend time there, just for a few seconds. Continuing with the definition of 0 point, I would like to now, once you define the polarity of the legs, the right and the left within the legs, then the right and the left within the shoulders, the right and the left within the head, we can go just mentally through the metrics. You know, crown, the right and the left and the head, which makes this would be the center of the room, right and left. Then the natural extension between the left side of the head and the shoulders, and the right and the shoulders, which becomes the release of the throat. Then the balance between the right shoulder and arm and the left leg and hip transversally, which creates the release of the solar plexus and the balance of the heart. Then the right and the left and the hips. Then the pelvic floor, which will be exactly between my both legs, at the center between the right and the left. And then after that, I can go into the room. This is the right and the left side of the room. This is up. This is the ceiling. The front and the back have equal importance, because the right and the left, the front and the back are equal importance. And I will begin to discover that sometimes I wanted to go more back. So if I go back, I took away from the right and the left. So, you know, just equalize the best you can all those directions. And then from then on, we are ready to start the motions. And now, before we start, the importance of the hands. If you allow, if the hands just dropped with it, you will lose contact with the shoulder joint. So the connection of the hand is a little bit higher in relation to the lower arm. So it's not like one line just falling with it, but just a little tiny bit higher. Not all the way up, not all the way down. At the center, you will sense like the arm is like a spiral of energy that it comes up to match your shoulder. So through this energy, through the arm, you begin to sense that you are assisting the shoulder girdle for not to really drop on top of the rib cage. Because if it falls on top of the rib cage, then the thoracic area of motion goes forward and relaxes into itself, and then we lose in the vertical. So it sounds like a lot now, but just beginning to remember that the connections of your hands assist the shoulder and the shoulder girdle to remain extended. Okay? Before we begin with the practice of the first section, I would like to clarify a movement that we already learned and practiced in the chair. And when we did that movement in the chair, the sixth movement, we call it the release of balance. And the way we did it is that we just went from foundation and we created a forward release that completed itself in a diamond, and when we were seated, and then it came back inside of itself to take us to the outer mandala. Now, standing, we are incorporating a new movement which is called descending ascending springs. And it's that the legs begins to bend and extend like a spiral in the floor, like a spring. And as we bend in the legs, the knees are slightly diagonal into the direction of the feet in order to provide the release of the hip and to provide the centering of the segments of the legs. This movement is called the release of balance. And the way it goes, as we learn it, or we're going to learn it again, is that it begins in foundation, and from foundation it raises the energy through the centers, merging the waves, and it bends the knees very gently, and then it moves with itself to touch the floor. And this moment is called touching balance. It's like a circle inside of you provided by the bending of the knees. And then from then, it returns to foundation, it ascends through centers, and it becomes the outer mandala, the releasing through the 7 centers and the outer mandala. If you were to see it from the side, it will be the same, the stanza. And remember that the stanza already is defined in the right and the left and the hips. And then from then, if it's begin in crown, it will go to suspended wave, to foundation. And as you raise the energy, the legs bend very gently. And as they bend, the arms and the torso moves with you to touch the floor. And it becomes a circle to release the spine through the circle. Then asymmetrically come back to foundation, it raises to infinity's gate and becomes the outer mandala. And then from there releases, and it completes and crowns.